Welcome to the next episode of our Focusing Pathways podcast. In this episode, Therese speaks to her friend Báirbre Meehan. Báirbre is a focusing orientated coach and coach supervisor based in Ireland. Her coaching journey began 12 years ago, at a time when her personal development journey led her to focusing, and from there, the integration of these powerful ways of working naturally emerged. Báirbre shares with us details of her self-funded research project measuring the impact of a focusing-orientated coaching approach on people with low mental well-being. She speaks about the challenges, support received, and the positive outcome of this research. She also speaks about her love for focusing and the powerful impact it can have on people's lives and how it can be a way for coaches to support each other. We invite you to take time and enjoy listening to Báirbre's story and hear her passion for sharing focusing-orientated coaching.
Hello, Báirbre, and welcome to Focusing Pathways. It's so lovely to have you as a guest. We go a long way back. We grew up very near each other. We've been friends a long time. We've worked together, and you are the person who introduced me to focusing. And so you've been very much a part of my focusing journey. So it feels special to be having this conversation together.
Thank you, Therese. Lovely to hear all of that.
So I'd love to start by asking you to remember back and tell us about how focusing found you.
Yeah, and found me it did. So I'm an executive coach. That's what I do as a profession. And I was doing a course on the psychological dimensions of coaching, and I volunteered for a demonstration. And the tutor said to me afterwards, "You know what you were doing there? It was a very, very powerful session." And I was the coachee, and he said, "You know what you're doing there? You were focusing." And I said, "Well, I have no idea what that is," but it was amazing. And that's how focusing found me. So I discovered that I'm a natural focuser. And just once I discovered it, or even got a glimpse at it, was really all it was at that stage. I couldn't get enough of it. So I read Jenlin's book, the 1978 book, Seminal One, and I was captivated. So I went searching and found a teacher in Tom Larkin. And I went on a couple of programs, a couple of weekend programs. I remember my kids were really small at the time, so it seemed like such a self-indulgent thing to do. But I really wanted to know more about it. So I went on 3-4 weekend programs, and I did a lot of one-on-one focusing because I really wanted to learn how to do it, how to be with that part of me, but also how to listen to another. I just had a sense it would be very beneficial in the work I do. And of course, that's only a small part of it. The personal benefit is quite enormous. So that's where it all began, Therese.
And when you remember back to that very first powerful session on that course, are you able to describe for us what was it? What was it that captivated you and made you so sure that there was something really powerful here that you wanted to bring more into your life?
I mean, I had no insight into the fact that there was a different way of working. I didn't realize the power of the body and the potential that just lay within by just pausing and taking time. And I remember, so in coaching, we start with an agenda, And I remember being asked a question and just going in, and this really powerful image came. And just been told by Jeff, who was the coach, to just stay with it. And from there, what emerged was quite amazing. To this day, I remember the image. I've had that image in focusing a lot, and it just made so much sense of so much about me, you know, me and my ingrained patterns, me and my way of being. It just really seemed to capture all of that. And it was really so beneficial. It shifted something very significant, and it brought new insight into myself. And yeah, it was, I suppose it was equally unexpected, but it was like a treasure trove. You know, I'd found this richness, and yeah, I didn't know. Can I access that again? Is there a way to, you know, have that more often or understand ourselves better through the body? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So even that one first session had a profound effect in everyday life, it sounds like, by bringing that insight into your, as you say, your patterns, your behavior, and then wanting more of that, having a glimpse of, wow, that this can change. This can change how I am in life, and the power of that. So once you started training with Tom and learning how to listen to others, how did that impact you, maybe personally first, or was that totally tied up with how you were impacted professionally as well?
I think originally, I mean, it happened in a coaching session, so I had a sense that it would find a place there. But for me at the time, it was like that insight was very personal insight and new awareness and new perspective in terms of how I was. So for me at the time, it made a lot of sense, and it was a personal journey initially, and that was fundamentally and solely what it was about. Yeah, I just, you know, I had 3 small children. There was a lot going on in my life, and I guess that's why I wanted it originally. That's why I wanted to understand it. And we'll probably go on to talk about, I teach it now, and that's what I always say. Leave all of that aside and let's just start with us. And that's how it was for me.
Yeah. And then, so you were experiencing the benefits of it in your own life, and you had a sense in those at that stage of how it might come into your work. So can you tell a little bit about how that
Yeah,
began and how you started off with that?
yeah. So I always say everything about my focusing journey was so organic and natural, like focusing itself. One step just led to another, just led to another. So in the corporate world, I was just using it. You know, I would come across people that were struggling, or finding it hard, as so many of us do. And I would just say, let's take a moment. And I began to really understand. I don't know if this is a common fact or it's just something I've discovered through practice, but about a third of people I'm really surprised at that they just can focus so naturally. They don't trust it, but they can. And then the majority, the rest of the group, can be taught to do it with encouragement and guidance and support, and by creating a safe space. So I really naturally just crept into my coaching work, and I was quite amazed. And I could see that almost the deeper my work with clients, and that correlated directly to the more body-based work that we were doing, then the more safety and a safe space was being created, and really the more the clients would share. So I remember being in a group of coaches one day and saying to them, I'm seeing so much anxiety and low mood, and I'm seeing so much burnout. Are you experiencing the same? And lots of them So I'm going back 10 years now. Lots of them would have been saying, no. So I began to realize there was something about the degree of what I was saying. There was something about the work. There was something about the way I was introducing it that was making it comfortable for people to just talk a little bit more than they might about what was going on. So the more that happened, very naturally, my work became more and more body-based and focusing-based. And it was a bit of a no-brainer, to be honest, Therese, because that's where we're getting all the results. And I began to trust it more and more. And even with people that spend a lot of time in their head, I over time, I found a way of really helping them to come back in and reconnect. And then what happened was somebody in the focusing community introduced me to somebody. I live in Sligo on the Northwest Coast, as you know. Somebody in this area that was a practicing focusing oriented psychotherapist. And I met him, Peter. I met him a number of times, and we just really connected on the power of the work. And I was telling him what I was doing, and he was so encouraging. For me, you know, there was something new unfolding, and he was very supportive of that. So I decided that I'd set up a study, mental well-being study, using this focusing work. And I would invite people to come, and I would work with them. Obviously not in a therapeutic way, because I'm not trained to do that, but in a coaching way. So in a focusing oriented coaching way. I wasn't calling it that at the time, but that's what was happening. So Peter, been a psychotherapist, referred people in. His wife was a GP. She referred people in, and word of mouth then began to take over. So to cut a long story short, it ended up that in that study, there was 87 people that I saw, and then that grew in time to over 100. So so I began to develop a process, and I began to just try out different ways of working. And as you know, Therese, I'm an accountant originally, so I was determined to find a way to measure mental well-being. So the process was that I would meet people day one. I would measure their mental well-being, and then if we both agreed to work together, I would see them for 3 months, over 8 hours. And just over that time, a process developed, a focusing oriented coaching process developed for working with people with low mental well-being. And the results were quite incredible. And I think as some of the professionals who were very brave to take a risk, as they heard their own patients or clients talk about the impact it was having on them, they would refer more people to me. So yeah, that was it really. I developed a process. And then I guess at the end, I wanted to see everybody after 6 months, because I was interested in understanding what had happened over that period of time for them. So 6 months after we finished our coaching work, I would see them, and I would measure their mental well-being again. And the results were quite incredible. So there was an enormous increase in mental well-being, which was sustained after 6 months. And you know, how was that? People would say, and I would tell them that I felt what I was doing was I was helping them to connect in. I was teaching them to trust the rightness of their body. And over the time, I was helping them cultivate practices of bodily awareness, which would sustain them in their lives. So it was a combination of those ongoing practices, helping them to connect in, teaching them some strategies to do that in a very practical way, but also the insights and the awareness, like my first coaching session, the insights and the awareness that came, and the understanding that came for a lot of people of what was really happening for them in their bodies. So, and then I took the research further, and I talked to more people, and you know, people were a little bit taken aback, and they were saying, well, what happens after 2 years? So I invited everybody back after 2 years. So the body of research took nearly 5 years in total. And so I invited people back after 2 years, and I measured their mental well-being. And there was a slight drop, but really marginally. So this curve from here to here really held up after 2 years. And I was intrigued what people said when they came back. I mean, that was to me some of the most interesting things about the whole program and what they said it had done for them in their lives. So fundamentally, over that period of time, what I did was I developed a focusing oriented coaching process. So that was specifically through the mental wellbeing research, but in parallel with that, I was using it in corporate life. So obviously not just for people with low mental wellbeing. And then sometimes people were skeptical about whether it was some magic that I was working, but of course we know it wasn't. So I invited Jeff, who was the first person that introduced me, and yourself, Therese, to come, and that's when at the time we were working together, and trained you in the process. And I'm sure you remember some of your own clients, but you were getting the same results. So proving that the results were comparable across a number of coaches and using the process. So I feel like I've been talking a lot. I'll take a break.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you describe that whole process, because although I would have, I would have known your journey, but it's just, I'm so struck when I hear you by a few things. So first of all, how one thing led to another very organically, as you say, and in a very focusing way. So I'm really struck by the way that conversation you had with the coaches about anxiety, and your sense that there was something here that you were seeing or experiencing that was really important and worth following. And your own personal experience of the benefit of focusing, and the way you followed that, something about, your willingness to follow your felt sense of there being something really important here that had helped you and could help others and could really, I don't know, add immense value to the way you were working with other people. And I suppose the courage in embarking on that big study with people with low mental well-being, when, as you say, you've been working as a coach, not a therapist, and to work in a coaching way with people with low mental well-being. So I'm struck by all of that, the way it unfolded, the organic way it unfolded.
Yeah, thank you, Therese. And it was really, it started off with just a concentrated group. There was 18 in the first study, and then it just grew. And then people were telling me that statistically that wasn't big enough, because I talked to so many people throughout it. But also, I wanted, at that time I was reading massively, every focusing book I could get my hands on, trying to make sense of what I was seeing and what I was experiencing. But I had two wonderful supervisors that really held me up at times when I doubted myself. And again, that was Peter Devlin that I mentioned, who's now passed, and Dr. Jeff Pelham. So the support I think that I had through that time really sustained me, because of course there's lots of times when I questioned it, but even the feedback. I mean, just on my website, pause.ie, there's some amazing testimonials about what people had to say. So I think it was the clients that were just drawing me forward and drawing me on, and they wanted to know so much about what happened that day in the room. And of course what happened that day in the room was that they were really in touch with their bodily experience of what was at the core of what was going on in their lives. And they were very moved, and they moved me. It organically moved forward. It became such a passion, and but the results as well, and the power of focusing was what willed me on. I remember at times it was really lonely, trudging it on my own. I remember that. But I was going, and you were always there as well. Therese to support me. So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and to hear those numbers is quite amazing. To hear the number of people you worked with, and the length of the journey, and the difficulty of it at times as well. I really hear all that. And when you look
Just
back,
one thing on that, actually.
yeah,
I remember sitting down and working out how many one-on-one coaching hours I had been doing. Because of course, as well as the people that were finished, there were some people that didn't need all of that, didn't need all of the process. So there was a lot of other people. And then there was some people I met, and then it may not necessarily have been the right thing for them at that time. So I think I did 1,200 one-on-one coaching hours across that body of work. So it was enormous. It was enormous. But I really learned to master. I think that's the fundamental basis. I learned with all of those people. I learned to. I'm catching something right now within me when I said that word master. There was a part of me shying away from it, telling me not to be blowing my own trumpet. So I just say hello to that. But I really learned my craft and learned the nuances of working with different people.
And I would love to hear some of what was really important about what you learned in working with all those people. So if you were to give just a couple of things that you really, maybe that surprised you, or that you weren't expecting in all of that time.
Yeah. Oh, what a lovely question. The first thing that comes to me is the primacy of human presence. And they were Jenlin's words. And I often can feel the emotion rise within me when I say that. But what Jenlin said about the primacy of human presence was that there really is just you and I, two human beings here, and forgetting all the qualifications and all the practical experience and all that I've been through all my life. I just leave them here. And then over here, I take all my own emotions and I just leave them this side. And now it's just two people, you and I together. And I'm just here to listen to you. And I'm here just to really listen to you so you can listen to yourself. So above all else, that's what matters. And it took me a long time to understand. I'm not sure if people listening will kind of grasp what that means, but it took me a long time to understand the stripped back nature of an interaction between two human beings. And I've sat with people who had planned to take their own life in that day. And that's all. That's it. Just two human beings sitting there and clearing a space for each other, just to be with each other. It's amazing what emerges from that space. So that's the fundamental and most important thing. I mean, of course, there's lots of things that get in the way of all of that. But that was one. The second thing, Therese, to answer your question, was after 6 months when people came back, at that time I was trying to name the process. I mean, it's funny to me now because it seems so unimportant, but I felt I was trying to capture what the people on the study, the participants, how they would capture all of that. And again and again and again, they came up with the term the inner compass. And for them, what that meant was that they were learning the rightness of things. So if their head was telling them one thing, they could trust their body to know that only a focuser knows that sense of rightness. So I think that was the second thing. That's probably one of the most important things, I think, for us. And that was the second thing, I think. Could you ask me your question again? What were the big learnings for me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I suppose what surprised you, or what was unexpected?
Yeah. So there's something also about our differences. So working with different people, they need different things to be held in a space. Some just really need a lot of reassurance, and some need to be pointed to a lot more so that it's more directional. But it's kind of a paradox. So there's the two parts to it. There's the really seeing the differences in people, and when we're teaching them how to focus and when we're helping them access their body around whatever that situation in their life is. There's really understanding there's differences, but there's also understanding that for us all, there's so much that's common. And when we go into the body and what comes in the body, I can't tell you the number of times now that somebody says something's come in the body, and I've heard it before, I've seen it before, and I kind of nearly know what the next step is. So it's that paradox of being able to treat everybody differently based on what they needs, but just trusting just the basics of how the body works and the similarity that we all have. And what it is the similarity of our experience. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it really does make sense. So it's like what I'm hearing you say is that, you recognize, is patterns the right word or not? I don't know, but similarities, and yet each person is our own living process and experiencing our world uniquely. And so our process will be unique. Our focusing process will be unique to that.
Yeah, that's right. And something else is coming now, Therese, and so I teach coaches how to use focusing in their work, and this is one of the most difficult things I think for people. It's this balance or this fine line between allowing the focusing process to naturally unfold. As we know, the body knows the right next step, and it's fresh and it's living. So it's the balance between allowing that to happen, yet also moving things forward in a coaching way. So that's something about when to intervene, how to gently intervene. That word sounds so wrong, actually. I'm getting a not rightness in my body when I use the word intervene. To be with. So I think I learned all of that. I learned the balance between the natural unfolding nature of focusing and the forward moving nature of coaching.
Yeah.
It's actually a really important one.
Yeah, it really is, because both are there, and yet both are needed in order to bring that change and that direction. And I'm really sensing how your felt sense is coming into that as well with the client, your felt sense of where they are in their process and of, I don't know, is it guiding or staying with them as they move forward?
Yeah. So and again, that's a difficult one to really learn, but it's really how do I stay connected to what's going on for me, understand what might or might not be getting in the way, so telling me that I'll come back to that later, but also so I can really clear myself just to be with and have them accompany their felt sense. And my felt sense then is the untainted felt sense, if you like, is so my cleared felt sense is now guiding me as to where they need to move to with their felt sense. And oftentimes it's the most simple thing. There's a joke on every single program I've been on now that we're doing a Báirbre on it, and it's a So it can be the simplest. It just reassures people that they're in the right place.
Yeah, I really hear that. And
There's one other thing that's coming to me. Sorry, did I speak over you there? Sorry.
Go ahead.
The other thing that really surprised me is the simplicity. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but the simplicity of what happens in a focusing session and the simplicity with what comes after a felt shift for a person, and the simplicity of knowing and of rightness. So some of the most common things that I hear at the end of a focusing session are things like, I'm going to be okay, haven't I? I can feel myself being moved by it, or I'm a good man. You know, so focusing has a way of just taking the most complex of situation that a person is in and simplifying it down. So it has a way of just gathering all that up and bringing something new and something fresh and allowing the body to move forward. And yeah, it's always something so simple, but very, very profound.
Yeah, and when I hear you say those two sentences, actually, I really what comes for me is, yes, the simplicity, the beautiful simplicity of them, and the all that they contain as well, the richness of
Yes.
them. So as you say, that is the beauty of focusing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
it.
And I really want to ask you more about your work now with teaching, focusing to coaches. But before we come on to that, I'm curious, when you remember back to when you started your coaching work and how you worked then with clients and how you work now with clients, is it so different, or what comes to you? And
Yeah,
the way you were in yourself before you knew focusing, before that first
yeah.
session, and how you are now.
It's interesting because I do a lot of, I'm also a focusing oriented supervisor. I do a lot of supervision, and my predominant preference naturally is focusing oriented supervision. So I see a lot of coaches that are new, and they often remind me of myself. Um, and you know, well, let me speak about myself, but when I started out first, it was about, you know, the magic questions and the, you know, how I could help them people get a result. And, you know, we were taught lots of tools and lots of psychological tools operating on the psychological that can be really, really useful, and they are really useful. But when I see how I work now, a kind of, an over-reliance on the thing we know, or the things we've been taught, which can pull us out of being in the moment. Because that's where, and that's the only place we can work with in a focusing way, is just being here right now, freshly experiencing what is, and noticing, you know, so much of what I do now is just noticing what's going on for people. Even when we're not fully immersed in the body, but I notice bodily reactions and bodily gestures, and I notice hand movements and all of that. So it's very, very different. And the word is emergent. I think the way I work now is emergent, whereas before that, it was much more rigid. And in truth, I probably took on too much responsibility. Whereas I know now, felt sense, I don't need to do anything, just be with it.
Yeah, it's coming back to the primacy of human presence, isn't it? It sounds like that's the key now.
It always comes back to that phrase. Always, always. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other part of my question was, in your own life, how are you different now?
Well, the very first thing that comes to me when you say that is, I think I've learned to be much more compassionate with myself. So, you know, in the language of focusing, if I find a frustrated part, there's very often another part that's compassionate to that frustrated part. So as we know, we can work with either one. So I really noticed that in myself, like a care and a loving and a compassion for all the parts of me, not just the part of me that's very obviously showing up in the moment. I think that's one thing. But I think the second, well, there's three. The second one that comes is that knowing, that rightness. Like so many times we encounter somebody that might have an opinion or a sense of something, or you know, and not even a you should do this, but a oh no, or somebody's reaction that can kind of knock us back. But just a very gentle checking in can tell us what's right. So I suppose with that, I've become much braver in saying, no, it's not like that. Oh, no, I really hear what you're saying, but it's not quite like that for me. It's a little bit different. So I feel in that braveness, my voice is quietened actually, but it's stronger in another way. So I may have been more outwardly vocal, but now it's more gentle. It's more that compassionate voice, you know, seeing the other person, seeing myself. So I think that's the second thing. And the third thing is that, of course, after, I don't know, 12 or 15 years now, focusing on a very regular basis, I've gotten to know myself a bit better. I mean, there's a lot more there, obviously, but I think, and things from previous focusing sessions come back that can help me to understand or remind me. So yeah, I think that increasing self-awareness that focusing brings over time, and we don't even realize that that's happening, because it's just that gradual, you know, little bit of getting to know ourselves. But I say all that, Therese, and I say right behind it, I'm as human and I still have some of the very same challenges, but maybe they're gentler and softer now, and maybe I'm more compassionate to myself and the other person in the midst of those.
And they're lovely gifts, aren't they, to have from a focusing life. And Báirbre, I know that you are teaching focusing to coaches at the moment, and I know that's a big part of your life now, and that you've recently had an article published describing your work. So would you like to speak a little bit about that and tell us about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, again, something that very naturally emerged. So I coach and I supervise on a regular basis, and I was just doing that. But I was asked to speak at an alumni gathering about 18 months ago, and maybe a bit longer now, I can't remember. But I just spoke to coaches about the work, and a very kind client allowed me to show an 8-minute video, which was an extract from a 1-hour session, just showed the power of the process. And people were nothing short of blown away. So several people asked me afterwards, could they learn to do that as well? And so what I did was I went about, you know, documenting what I felt were the key steps in the process to teach it. So to teach focusing oriented coaches. And what I've actually discovered is that it's not just coaches actually that want to learn how to do this. Therapists or lots of people in the helping profession are really interested in it. So that's where I am now. I ran it initially with a small pilot group. But there's 3 parts to it. There's 3 workshops, and there's lots of onlines in between. But the first workshop is just teaching focusing. So, you know, that's another joke we have. Anyone that mentions coaching, we don't talk about that until workshop 2. Because it's back to that, if we can't do it for ourselves, then we can't be with another in a focusing way. So it's wonderful work, Therese. I love it. And again, like with the clients and the mental well, I love what's coming back, and I love to hear people's stories of what they're experiencing in their work with their clients. And I do group supervision with any of the group that I teach. So, you know, there's so much of, yeah, making sure that the coaches I teach them as well as they can, and that their work is as good as they can. And, you know, back to the supervision, I think that's really important. So yeah, I've a program running, and I'm recruiting for a program now in January in Dublin. There's a new program starting in January. So yeah, and I hope I'll continue to just go where focusing takes me, which has been the journey from the beginning. I'm also documenting and writing a lot about it at the moment.
And we'll put a link to your article in the episode notes so people can read that.
That would be lovely. And if it's okay to say, it's on the website, my website, pauls.ie, so people can go and find it there.
Great, great. So it sounds like that's what's really alive for you now, this work of bringing focusing to coaches and other people working alongside people.
Yeah, that's really alive for me. Writing about it, and I guess the teaching and the writing come hand in hand. You know, as I move through and really understand what's difficult for people to understand, then that helps me to, you know, just get clearer myself. So that's really alive for me. But so too as the work. You know, I still do work with senior leaders in organisations, and I always do some pro bono work. But there's something at the moment happening that's quite magical in the work, and I'm intrigued to understand more about what that is. So I don't know, is it another layer that's beginning to emerge? So that's really the one-on-one coaching is really exciting me at the moment as well. Yeah, I love it all.
That seems to be where a lot of your learning comes in those one-to-one sessions.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it isn't something we can learn in isolation, and particularly if we're working with somebody else. It's all the nuances. It's all the being in touch with the other person. You know, you asked me a question earlier. What has focusing done for my work, my coaching work? It's helped me to listen at a level I didn't even know it was possible to listen in the moment. Yeah, no, I've just been drawn there now through it, and I've forgotten your question.
So have I think.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, all of that is alive.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end, Barbara, but
Yeah.
I really want to check with you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Is there anything we haven't spoken about that you feel you'd like to mention?
Mm. You know, the one thing that's coming is every time I work with the group, or I talk about focusing in a group, or people ask me why it's not more available. And that's really, I'm never sure I can articulate the answer to that well. I'm not even sure I've ever heard anyone articulate that well. But that's something that's really important to me, is to, and I guess when I say that, that's what was really important to Jenlin, wasn't it? Certain people, he observed them doing it naturally, and his original book was to teach everybody how to do it, because it's a skill that can be taught to everybody. So it's something about that for me. It's really important that we translate focusing into a language that's accessible and that's understood and that feels like it's worthwhile enough for people to to want it, and when they experience it. And of course, that's the other thing I've discovered, if I'm giving a workshop or if I'm doing a webinar, when people see it, they come alive. Like this lovely 8-minute video I have, all of a sudden people find it hard to understand. Then I go, oh, how did you do that? So there's something about really bringing it forward and having more and more people experience it. So that feels like something I think that all of us in the focusing community probably share in wanting to do that. Yeah, and the other thing is, one thing that I'm also doing is building a community of coaches where we can support each other as we move forward. So everyone that comes on the programs, we come together a couple of times a year just as a group of focusing oriented coaches to see how we can do more of it, how we can do it better, and how we can support each other. So that just came there, the focusing community, the focusing oriented coaching community idea. And of course, that's what you and Elaine and all the people in the Irish Focusing Network are doing, and Tiffy and is really seeing the importance and valuing the sense of community
Yeah.
in terms of keeping it alive and bringing it forward.
Yeah, so important, isn't it? And the sense of, yeah, where we are in the world now and how more than ever we need this way of listening to each other, and how it could change everything if more
Yeah,
people had it available.
yeah. And the irony, of course, is, Therese, you know, I mean, I started it in coaching, and then it moved into mental well-being, and then it moved back into corporate life. But and now it's a bit, it's all there. But yeah, experience tells me that when I meet somebody, whether it's mental well-being or meet somebody in corporate life, that it's a corporate issue or a leadership question or something, so much for them is manifesting in their body. So with all the chaos in the world, that's where it's presenting, and that's where it's challenging people. So it just makes so much sense, obviously, that focusing is what people need most, more than anything else, is to go into their bodies, into what's happening for them, and really be with, find a way, learn a way to be with that and to understand it, and for something fresh to emerge.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a lovely way to finish. And I've really enjoyed our chat, really enjoyed our conversation, and so thankful to you, Bárbara, for coming on our podcast.
Well, yeah, it's my pleasure. I've really enjoyed telling my story. And thank you for making it easy to do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Bárbara.